Ambassador Taesung stood in the center of the massive chamber and felt very small. Above him, thousands of alien beings sat in rows that curved up toward a ceiling he could barely see. Some had tentacles, some had scales, some looked like walking insects or floating clouds of gas. They all stared down at him, with eyes that showed no kindness. The chamber was on Centauri Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Council. Taesung had been here many times before, always hoping to build friendships between humanity and the galaxy. Today was different. Today was the trial. Hana sat in the visitor section, her hands gripped tight on the rail in front of her. She was Taesung's advisor and friend. She had warned him this day might come. The other species feared humans. They always had. A massive insect-like creature stood up from the highest seat. This was Velthros, the council arbiter. His voice came out in clicks and buzzes. But the translator in Taesung's ear turned it into words. "We gather today to decide the fate of species classified as human," Velthros announced. "The charges are serious. This council has observed humanity for 100 standard years. What we have seen troubles us greatly." Taesung wanted to speak, but the arbiter raised one sharp leg to silence him. "Humans are too aggressive," Velthros continued. "In 1 century, you have expanded to 40 star systems. You build weapons first and ask questions later. Your history is filled with wars. Even now, your nations cannot fully trust each other. You are predators who smile while planning violence." Angry voices filled the chamber. Thousands of aliens agreed with clicking sounds, roars, and electronic beeps. Taesung felt his heart sink. "That's not fair," he said, even though no one was listening. "Every species here has fought wars. The Catherians destroyed 3 of their own colony worlds in civil wars. The Draxans hunt other species for sport. Why do you judge us differently?" Oh, but Taesung knew why. Humans were good at war. Too good. In the few conflicts humanity had faced against pirates or raiders, human forces won quickly and efficiently. This scared the other species more than anything else. Velthros called for evidence. One by one, alien representatives stood and listed humanity's crimes. The Yothians complained that human traders were too competitive and drove their businesses to failure. The Plenari said human colonies grew too fast and used too many resources. The Sithaks claimed human soldiers were genetically dangerous because of their endurance and adaptability. "They can eat almost anything," one Sithak representative said with disgust. "They survive in environments that would kill most of us. They breed quickly and live long enough to gain dangerous amounts of knowledge. They are biological weapons disguised as a civilized species." Finally, Velthros allowed Taesung to speak. The ambassador stepped forward and looked up at the thousands of watching eyes. "Yes, humans have fought wars," he began. "Yes, we are survivors. But we came to the stars, hoping to leave our violent past behind. We sought friendship. We wanted to learn from older, wiser species. Every colony we built followed council laws. Every trade agreement was fair. We have never attacked another council species." "Not yet," someone shouted from the alien crowds. Laughter followed. Taesung felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "We are not perfect, but we are trying to be better. Isn't that what civilization means? Growing beyond what we were?" Hana watched from above. Her eyes wet with tears she refused to let fall. She knew it was hopeless. The council had already made its decision before the trial even began. Velthros called for the vote. "All who believe humanity should be exiled from Galactic Council space. Signal now." 7. Lights appeared across the chamber. Green lights for yes. Red lights for no. Taesung watched as the entire chamber lit up green. Only 5 red lights appeared. 5 species out of more than 1,000. "The decision is made," Velthros announced. Humanity is hereby exiled from Council space. You have 1 standard year to remove all colonies, ships, and stations beyond your home system of Sol. Any human presence found outside this quarantine zone, after the deadline, will be destroyed without warning. This is our judgment. The chamber erupted in approval. Tae-sung stood frozen, unable to believe what he was hearing. Hana pushed through the crowd and reached his side. "We need to leave," she whispered. They walked through corridors filled with aliens who stared at them with satisfaction. Some even laughed. Outside the council building, their small shuttle waited. As they flew back to the human embassy, Tae-sung finally spoke. "They exiled us," he said quietly. "Like we're criminals." "We knew they feared us," Hana replied. "But I didn't think they'd go this far." "We knew. 1 year. How do we evacuate 40 colony worlds in 1 year? We'll find a way. We always do." The flight back to Earth took 3 weeks. Tae-sung spent the entire time preparing his report. When their ship entered Earth's atmosphere, they could see protests in every major city. Someone had leaked the news. People were angry, scared, and demanding answers. The United Earth government met in emergency session. Tae-sung stood before the representatives of every nation and told them what happened. The room exploded into chaos. "This is an act of war," someone shouted. "We should fight back," another voice called. "Against 1,000 species? Are you insane?" The arguments went on for hours. Finally, an old woman named Unji stood up. She was the chancellor, the elected leader of United Earth. Her voice cut through the noise. "Enough," she said firmly. "Fighting is exactly what they expect from us. They called us violent predators. Let's not prove them right. So we just accept this?" a representative asked. "No," Unji replied. "We survive. We retreat to Sol system. And we use this time wisely. If the galaxy won't accept us, we'll build something they can't ignore." Hana looked at Tae-sung. Something in the chancellor's words sparked an idea. They had 1 year to retreat. But after that, humanity would be alone with all their anger, all their brilliant minds, and all their determination. "They think they're punishing us," Hana whispered. "But they might have just given us exactly what we need." "What do we need?" Tae-sung asked. "Time, space, and a reason to become stronger than we ever imagined." The evacuation plans began immediately. Every ship humanity owned was repurposed for transport. The government sent messages to every colony. "Pack what you can carry, leave the rest, come home." 40 worlds with millions of people had to be emptied in 12 months. It was an impossible task. But humans had done impossible things before. As Tae-sung looked at Earth from the government building, he made a silent promise. Humanity would leave Council space as ordered. They would obey every rule of this cruel exile. But one day, when humans returned to the stars, it would not be to ask for acceptance. It would be to take what was rightfully theirs. Captain Minho stared at the display screen showing 317 ships. They were his responsibility now. 317 vessels filled with families, children, elderly people, and everything they could salvage from their homes. Behind them, the colony world of Kepler 442 grew smaller in the viewing port. "Captain, we're receiving distress calls from Sector 7, his communications officer reported. "Pirates are attacking the civilian transports again." Minho felt his jaw tighten. This was the 5th attack in 2 weeks. Alien pirates had learned that retreating humans made easy targets. Ships full of refugees couldn't fight back effectively. They were too slow, too crowded, and too vulnerable. "Change course," Minho ordered. "All military escorts, follow my lead." His ship, the Soul's Pride, turned sharply along with 15 other military vessels. They had weapons and trained crews, but they were badly outnumbered. The United Earth Defense Force had been scattered across 40 colony worlds. Now those forces were stretched thin trying to protect the evacuation. When they reached Sector 7, Minho saw 4 alien raider ships circling a group of civilian transports like sharks around prey. The raiders were Crothian vessels, built for speed and hit-and-run attacks. "This is Captain Mingho of the Soul's Pride," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Leave now or be destroyed." The Crothian commander laughed in response. "Wrong answer," Minho muttered. "All ships, weapons free. Target the engines first." The battle was brief but brutal. Human ships moved with precision that surprised the raiders. Military training that seemed excessive in peacetime now showed its value. Within 10 minutes, 3 Crothian ships were drifting with dead engines. The 4th tried to run, but didn't make it far. "Captain," his weapons officer said quietly. "Should we finish them?" Minho looked at the disabled raider ships. Part of him wanted revenge for every attack. Every refugee killed by pirates who thought humans were easy prey. But he shook his head. "No, let them drift. They can call for rescue from their own people. We're not murderers." But as they continued towards Sol System, Minho wondered how long humanity would keep showing mercy to a galaxy that showed them none. On Proxima Centauri 3rd, Young Ho stood in the mining colony's central square and looked at 10,000 angry faces. The colony had been here for 70 years. 3 generations had been born on this world. It was home. "I'm not leaving," someone in the crowd shouted. "This is my home." "Mine too," others joined in. Young Ho understood their anger. He felt it himself, but he also understood reality. "If we stay, the Council will destroy us. They've made that clear. We have 3 months left before the deadline. Let them come." A young miner named Take yelled. "We can defend this place." "Against what?" Young Ho replied. "Against 1,000 species? Against weapons we can't match? This colony has mining equipment and a few security rifles. How long do you think we'd last?" "Number." The crowd grew quiet. They knew he was right. But knowing didn't make it easier. An elderly woman named Bora stepped forward. She had arrived on the very first colony ship 70 years ago. "Young Ho is right. I helped build this colony. I raised my children here. My husband is buried here. Leaving breaks my heart. But staying would be suicide." Her words carried weight that Young Ho's could not. Slowly, the crowd began to accept what had to be done. The evacuation of Proxima Centauri 3 took 2 months. They packed equipment, supplies, and precious personal items. What couldn't fit was left behind or destroyed. Better to destroy it than let the Council species scavenge human achievements. On the last day, Young Ho walked through the empty colony one final time. The buildings stood silent. The mining equipment sat idle. Somewhere in space, a Council observation ship was probably watching, making sure the humans truly left. "Goodbye," Young Ho whispered to the empty streets. Then he boarded the last transport and left the world behind. While the evacuations continued, Dr. Ji-Wan worked frantically in her laboratory on Research Station Galatea. The station orbited a distant star in what used to be human territory. In 2 weeks, it would have to be abandoned. But Ji-Wan wasn't packing, she was stealing. For 5 years, she had studied alien technology, traded or captured from various species. She understood how their FTL drives worked, how their weapons operated, how their medical technology functioned. All of that research was stored in the station's computers, and the Council had specifically ordered all research data to be destroyed. "They're afraid," Ji-Wan muttered to herself as she copied files onto encrypted storage drives. "They don't want us to learn anything useful." Her assistant, a young man named Quan, watched nervously from the doorway. "They won't find out," Ji-Wan replied. "Because we're going to wipe the main computers completely. They'll think we followed orders." Ji-Wan. Ji-Wan. "But what if they scan the station?" "Let them scan. These drives are shielded and hidden. I've been preparing for this for months." Quan helped her hide the drives throughout the station in places scanners wouldn't detect. Behind wall panels. Inside waste recycling units. Buried in the station's foundation. When the evacuation ship arrived, Jiwon and her team left with only personal belongings. To anyone watching, they had obeyed the Council's orders completely. The research station's computers were wiped clean, but the knowledge remained, hidden, and waiting to be recovered later. On the final day of the deadline, Minho commanded the last convoy of ships crossing into Sol system. Behind them, a Council blockade fleet took up positions around the boundary. Dozens of alien warships from multiple species formed a wall. "They're really doing it," his executive officer said. "They're caging us in." Minho watched the blockade ships on his display. Some were powerful battlecruisers. Others were smaller patrol craft. Together, they represented the Council's determination to keep humanity locked away. "Let them," Minho said. "Every prison has walls. But walls can be broken." As the last human ship crossed into Sol space, Minho transmitted a message to the blockade fleet commander. "This is Captain Minho. All human vessels are now within Sol system as ordered. We have complied with the Council's exile." The alien commander responded coldly. "Acknowledged. Remember, any human ship detected beyond this boundary will be destroyed immediately. This is your final warning." The transmission ended. Minho looked around at his bridge crew. They looked exhausted, angry, and defeated. "Don't look so grim," Minho said. "We made it. Every colony evacuated. Millions of people safe. Nobody said it would be easy." "Safe?" his tactical officer asked bitterly. "We're locked in one star system. How is that safe?" "Because we're all together now," Minho replied. "No more scattered colonies. No more divided forces. Everything we have, everyone we are, it's all right here. The Council thinks they've weakened us. They're wrong. They've made us focus." As the weeks passed, the reality of exile set in. Earth's population had swelled from 8 billion to 11 billion. Mars, already terraformed, took another billion. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn were rapidly developed into new habitats. Asteroid mining increased tenfold to provide resources for the influx. It was crowded. It was chaotic. But slowly, humanity adjusted. Taesung met with Chancellor Eunji in her office overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Outside, construction crews were building new cities to house the refugees. "The people are angry." "Can you blame them?" Taesung replied. "No, but revenge is expensive. It requires patience." She turned from the window. "I'm authorizing a special project. Secret. Deep, black. It will take generations to complete." "What kind of project?" "The kind that ensures when humanity returns to the stars, we won't be exiled again." Eunji's eyes were hard. "The Council thinks they've seen human weapons and technology. They haven't seen anything yet." Taesung felt a chill. "How long?" "As long as it takes. 50 years. 100. 200. Time is on our side now. The Council will forget about us. They'll assume we've withered in isolation. And while they forget, we'll be building something they can't imagine." Outside, the sun set over an Earth more crowded than ever before. But inside government buildings and secret facilities, plans were being made. Humans had always been survivors. Now they would survive by becoming something the galaxy had never seen. The exile had begun. But so had humanity's transformation. 200 years had passed since the exile. The Council blockade still surrounded Sol system. But the ships were old now. Outdated. The crews rotated every few years, and nobody wanted blockade duty. It was boring work watching a species that had gone silent. On a Council patrol ship, a young Ketheran officer named Vilks stared at his sensor screens and yawned. He had been on blockade duty for 6 months and had seen nothing interesting. Radio signals from Earth had stopped decades ago. The humans were probably dying slowly in their cage. "Anything?" his commander asked without much interest. "Nothing, sir. Same as yesterday. Same as every day." "Good. Keep it that way." But if Vilks had pointed his sensors inward instead of outward, he would have seen something remarkable. Behind the asteroid belt, hidden in plain sight, humanity had built an empire. Director Salmon walked through the construction yards near Jupiter's orbit. Around her, ships took shape. Not the civilian transports of old Earth, but warships. Sleek, deadly, and built with technologies the Council had never seen. She was 70 years old, but looked 50 thanks to medical advances developed during the exile. She had dedicated her entire life to the Ghost Project, the secret program to prepare humanity's return to the stars. How many? She asked her assistant, a young woman named Yuna. 5,000 capital ships completed, Yuna reported. Another 3,000 in final construction, 15,000 support vessels. And the new fighters are exceeding all expectations, Salmon smiled. 5,000 ships that could each match 3 Council vessels. The math was satisfying. What about the FTL drives? She asked. Engineer Hyun says they're ready. The new drives don't use Council jump gates. We can appear anywhere without warning. This was the key advantage. Council species relied on a network of jump gates to travel between stars. Human ships could now bypass that entire system. It made traditional defense strategies useless. Salmon had been only 5 years old when the exile happened. She grew up hearing stories of the humiliation, the retreat, the loss. Her parents had fled from a colony world, with nothing but the clothes they wore. She remembered her mother crying as they left their home behind. Never again, Salmon whispered, repeating the phrase that every human child learned. Never again will we beg for acceptance. On Mars, Engineer Hyun stood in front of a massive display screen showing the new ship designs. Around him, 300 scientists and engineers waited for his presentation. The Council's biggest mistake, Hyun began, was giving us 200 years alone. They thought isolation would make us weak. Instead, it forced us to innovate. He pulled up a design schematic. This is the Thunderbird-class destroyer. Its weapons use principles we discovered by studying quantum mechanics. They don't understand yet. Its shields can withstand weapons that would vaporize Council ships, and its engines, he smiled. Its engines can go places Council ships can't reach. One of the scientists raised her hand. How do we know the designs will work? We've run simulations against every known Council vessel type, Hyun replied. We win 97% of encounters, and that's being conservative. Another voice spoke up. And the other 3%? Bad luck, Hyun said flatly. Even in war, luck matters. But 3% casualties are acceptable when conquering a galaxy. The room fell silent. Conquering. Nobody had said it so directly before. Is that really what we're doing? Someone asked. Conquering? Hyun's expression hardened. They exiled us. They called us dangerous animals. They laughed while we fled. Yes, we're conquering. Not because we're evil, but because it's the only way to ensure they never do this to us again. Across Sol system, every moon, every asteroid, every space station was part of the war machine. Humanity had turned its prison into a fortress and factory. The population had grown to 15 billion, and every person understood their role in the grand plan. On Venus, now terraformed into a habitable world, Jinwoo managed the agricultural centers that fed billions. He was old now, nearly 90, but his mind remained sharp. He had been a child during the evacuation and remembered the fear. My grandson starts military training next year, he told his assistant during an inspection tour. He's excited. All the young ones are, his assistant replied. They've grown up on stories of the exile. They want revenge. Jinwoo nodded slowly. Revenge. Such a simple word for such a complex feeling. I don't know if I want revenge anymore. I'm too old for hate. But I do want justice. Is there a difference? Revenge is about hurting them, Jinwoo explained. Justice is about making sure they can never hurt us again. One is emotional. The other is practical. He looked out at the vast agricultural fields stretching to the horizon. We've built something amazing here. Every world in Sol system is inhabited now. We've achieved unity that seemed impossible before the exile. In a way, the Council gave us a gift. A gift? They gave us a common enemy. Nothing unites people like shared suffering. Jinwoo smiled sadly. When we return to the stars, we won't be going as separate nations. We'll be going as one humanity. In the deep asteroid belt, a different kind of facility existed. This was where the soldiers trained. Not the regular military forces, but something new. Something designed specifically for the coming war. Commander Daehyun watched as 1,000 young men and women ran through combat simulations. They had been born and raised for this purpose. Enhanced through genetic selection, trained from childhood, and educated in every aspect of warfare. They're not natural, one of his subordinates said uneasily. We've bred super soldiers. We've bred survivors, Daehyun corrected. The Council calls us genetic weapons? Fine. Let's be the best weapons they've ever seen. The soldiers below moved with inhuman speed and precision. They could survive in harsh environments, fight for hours without tiring, and make decisions in milliseconds. They were everything the Council feared about humans, amplified and perfected. How many? The subordinate asked. 10 million in this generation, Daehyun replied. Another 20 million in training. By the time we launch, we'll have enough to conquer and hold 100 worlds. And after the war? Daehyun looked at the younger man. After the war, they'll be citizens like anyone else. We're not creating a slave race. We're creating protectors. They'll have rights, families, normal lives. But when humanity needs them, they'll be ready. As the years crept toward the 200th anniversary of the exile, tension built across Sol system. Everyone knew the plan. Everyone understood what was coming. The question was when. Director Salmon, now in her 80s, met with the military council one final time. We're ready, Fleet Admiral Junho reported. He was young for his rank, only 50, but he had trained his entire life for this moment. 7,000 capital ships, 20,000 support vessels, 30 million trained soldiers. New technology that gives us overwhelming advantages. The blockade fleet won't know what hit them. What about the council? Salmon asked. Our intelligence suggests they've grown complacent, answered an intelligence officer named Hayun. They monitor Sol system, but barely. They assume we're still here, still weak, still afraid. Most council species have forgotten we exist. We're a footnote in their history. Salmon nodded. Good. The best weapon is surprise. But once we break out, they'll react. They'll unite against us. Let them, Junho said confidently. Their unity is slow. Committees and votes and bureaucracy. By the time they organize a response, we'll control 50 star systems. And then we offer them a choice, Junho said. Join our new order, or be conquered. Simple. Salmon stood and walked to the window. Outside, shipyards stretched across space as far as she could see. The work of 2 centuries. The dream of billions. There's no turning back after this, she said quietly. Once we start, we're committed. War across the entire galaxy. We were committed the day they exiled us, Junho replied. They started this. We're just finishing it. The meeting ended. Orders went out to every military unit across Sol system. Prepare for deployment. The date was set. In 6 months, humanity would return to the stars. On Earth, in a secret government facility, the original recordings of the council trial were played for young soldiers about to deploy. They watched Ambassador Taesung, long dead now, stand before the council and plead for understanding. They watched the lights turn green as species after species voted for exile. This is why we fight, their commanding officer told them. Not for conquest, not for glory, but because they decided we had no right to exist beyond 1 star system. They decided we were animals to be caged. We're going to teach them that caging a predator only makes it more dangerous. The soldiers watched in silence. When the recording ended, they stood and saluted the memory of those who had suffered the humiliation of exile. In 6 months, that humiliation would be repaid with interest. The 200 years of silence were about to end with a storm of fire and fury that would shake the galaxy to its foundations. The prey had become the hunter. The exiled would become the conquerors. And the Galactic Council, comfortable in their arrogance, had no idea what was coming. The blockade ship Eternal Watch drifted in its patrol pattern around Sol system. Inside, Commander Relthic of the Yothian species reviewed his daily reports with complete boredom. In his 3 years stationed here, nothing had ever happened. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual readings near Jupiter," a sensor officer reported. "Define unusual," Relthic said without looking up. "Energy spikes. Hundreds of them. Oh no." The sensor officer's screen exploded with contacts. Ships. Thousands of ships emerging from behind Jupiter's moons like a swarm of angry insects. "Sound the alarm," Relthic shouted. "All blockade vessels. This is Eternal Watch. The humans are breaking out. Repeat. The humans are breaking out." His warning went out to the 40 ships of the blockade fleet. But it was already too late. Fleet Admiral Junho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Righteous Thunder. Around him, tactical displays showed the human fleet spreading out like a steel fist. 7,000 capital ships, each one a masterpiece of engineering that represented 200 years of anger and innovation. "Blockade fleet is responding," his tactical officer reported. 40 ships taking defensive positions. "Only 40? Junho smiled coldly. "They really did forget about us. All ships, weapons free. Destroy them quickly. Minimize any chance they get a warning out." The human fleet fell upon the blockade like wolves on sheep. Human weapons, based on principles the Council had never imagined, tore through alien shields as if they were paper. Missiles guided by quantum targeting systems hit with perfect accuracy. Energy beams powered by miniaturized fusion cores melted hulls in seconds. The Eternal Watch managed to fire 3 shots before a human destroyer cut it in half. Commander Relthic died, still unable to believe what he was seeing. In his last moments, he realized that humanity had not been dying in isolation. They had been preparing. The entire battle lasted 11 minutes. 40 Council ships destroyed. 0 human casualties. "Send reconnaissance drones to every system within 50 light years," Junho ordered. "I want to know where every Council ship is. And activate our sleeper agents. It's time they earned their keep." Ack. 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 On a Council trade station in the Kepler sector, a woman named Minji received an encrypted message. She had lived on this station for 30 years, pretending to be a refugee who had escaped human space before the exile. She ran a small shop selling textiles and had become a trusted member of the community. Nobody suspected she was a human intelligence agent. The message was simple: execute Protocol Dawn. Minji closed her shop and walked to the station's power distribution center. She had worked there part-time for years, long enough to gain security clearance. The night shift supervisor knew her well and waved her through without checking. "Working late, Minji?" he asked. "Just finishing some paperwork," she lied with a smile. Once inside, she accessed the maintenance systems and uploaded a virus she had carried encrypted in her neural implant for decades. The virus spread through the station's network like wildfire, shutting down life support, weapons, shields, and communications simultaneously. By the time anyone realized what happened, human ships were already arriving. The station surrendered without a fight. Across 100 star systems, similar scenes played out. Sleeper agents activated. Infrastructure failed. Chaos spread. The Council had been so certain of humanity's exile that they never considered humans might have escaped and blended into their society decades ago. General Tokros of the Draxan military received the first reports with disbelief. He was one of the Council's most experienced commanders, veteran of a dozen campaigns against pirates and rebels. But nothing in his experience prepared him for this. "How many ships?" he demanded. "Current estimates suggest 7,000 capital ships and at least 20,000 smaller vessels," his intelligence officer reported. "They've already captured 16 systems and are moving on 20 more. That's impossible. They only had one star system." "In secret, sir. Behind their asteroid belt where our sensors couldn't detect them. For 200 years. Thakros felt a chill. 200 years of preparation. 200 years of building weapons and ships and soldiers while the Council assumed they were dying. The humans had played a long game, and the Council had fallen for it completely. "What about their technology?" Thakros asked. "Far beyond our own. Their FTL drives don't use jump gates, so they can appear anywhere. Their weapons cut through our shields. Their ships are faster and more maneuverable. Sir, in every engagement so far, human forces have won with minimal casualties. Surely we have some advantages?" The intelligence officer hesitated. "Numbers. Perhaps. If we can unite the Council species and bring our full military might to bear. But coordination will take time." "How much time?" "Months, at minimum. You know how the Council works. Every species will argue about responsibility, costs, and strategy. Getting unanimous approval could take a year." Thakros slammed his fist on the desk. "By then the humans will control half the galaxy." At the Kepler Nexus, the largest trade hub in Council space, panic had set in. Thousands of ships were trying to flee, creating traffic jams and collisions. Station authorities tried to maintain order, but fear was spreading faster than their announcements. Fleet Admiral Junho had chosen the Nexus as his primary target for good reason. It was the economic heart of the Council. Capturing it would cripple trade across dozens of systems and send a message that nowhere was safe. His fleet arrived in the Nexus system in overwhelming force. 2,000 ships appeared simultaneously, surrounding the station and the 6 Council defense platforms protecting it. "This is Fleet Admiral Junho of the Terran Stellar Forces," he broadcast on all frequencies. "The Kepler Nexus is now under human control. All Council military vessels will power down their weapons immediately. Any resistance will be met with total destruction. You have 5 minutes to comply." On the largest defense platform, Commander Sekthis faced an impossible choice. His 6 platforms and 30 patrol ships against 2,000 human vessels. The math was absurd. "Sir, we can't win this," his tactical officer said. "I know," Sekthis replied. "But if we surrender without fighting, we'll be called cowards. If we fight, we'll be called corpses." Sekthis laughed bitterly. The officer was right. Pride was worthless if you were dead. "All ships, power down weapons," Sekthis ordered. "We surrender." The human fleet moved in and took control of the Nexus without firing a shot. It was the largest single victory in human military history, and it happened peacefully. Junho allowed the civilian ships to leave but kept the station itself and all its resources. On Earth, the news of victory after victory sparked celebrations. After 200 years of waiting, humanity was finally free of its cage. Streets filled with people cheering and crying. Old people who had fled the colonies as children finally felt justice being served, but not everyone celebrated. In a quiet government office, Ambassador Taesung's granddaughter, a woman named Sun Mi, watched the reports with mixed feelings. She worked in the foreign ministry and understood that war, even successful war, came with costs. "Are we becoming what they accused us of being?" she asked her colleague. "What do you mean? Violent, aggressive, conquerors." Sunmi gestured at the screens, showing human fleets capturing world after world. "We said we wanted justice. But this looks like revenge." "Maybe justice and revenge are the same thing," her colleague replied. "They wronged us. We're making them pay." "What's wrong with that?" Sunmi didn't have an answer. She had grown up on stories of the exile, of the humiliation her great-grandfather had suffered. She understood the anger, but she also wondered where it would end. The war continued. Human forces pressed deeper into Council space, capturing system after system, but resistance was starting to form. General Takros had managed to assemble a defense force of 3,000 ships from various Council species. They met the human Third Fleet at a system called Harunia. It was the first real battle since the war began. 3,000 Council ships against 1,000 human vessels. The battle raged for 6 hours. Human technology gave them an edge, but Council numbers made up for it. Ships exploded on both sides. The space around Harunia filled with debris and bodies. Commander Dae-hyun led a fighter squadron through the chaos. His enhanced reflexes let him dodge attacks that would have killed normal pilots. Around him, his squadron members moved with similar precision. They were the super soldiers, trained from birth for exactly this scenario. "Target that command carrier," he ordered. "If we take it out, their coordination collapses." His squadron dove through defensive fire that should have been impossible to survive. But they were faster, smarter, and more focused than anything the Council had fought before. They reached the carrier and unleashed a devastating attack on its bridge. The carrier exploded. Without its command ship, the Council fleet's coordination fell apart. Human forces pressed the advantage, and within an hour, the battle was over. Human victory, but at a cost. 70 ships lost. 12,000 human lives. It was the worst casualties humanity had suffered so far, and it sobered the celebrations back home. "This is what war really looks like," Sunmi said as she read the casualty reports. "Not glorious. Not clean. Just death." But the war continued because neither side could stop now. The Council couldn't accept human dominance. Humanity couldn't risk returning to the cage. So they fought. System by system. World by world. General Thakros studied the battle reports from Harunia and realized something disturbing. The humans had won even when outnumbered 3-1. Their technology was just that much better, which meant the Council's only hope was to outnumber them 10-1, or 20-1. "We need to evacuate non-essential worlds and concentrate our forces," he told the Council representatives. "Fighting them everywhere means losing everywhere. We need to choose where to make our stand." But the Council couldn't agree. Each species wanted to protect their own worlds first. The coordination that might have stopped humanity fell apart in arguments and competing priorities. Junho watched the Council's fractured response with satisfaction. "They're making our job easy," he told his staff. "They can't stop arguing long enough to organize a real defense." "We're still taking casualties," his chief of staff reminded him. "The longer this war goes on, the more people we lose." "True," Junho admitted. "But we're winning, and sometimes that's all that matters." As the months passed, human forces controlled more than a quarter of what had been Council space. Dozens of species had surrendered and accepted human rule. Some even welcomed it, tired of the Council's bureaucracy and inefficiency. The galaxy was changing. The empire that had exiled humanity 200 years ago was crumbling. And in its place, something new was being born. 2 years had passed since the first human ships broke through the blockade. The galaxy was unrecognizable now. What had been the Galactic Council's unified space was fractured into dozens of territories, and the largest of those territories belonged to humanity. On Earth, in a ceremony watched by billions across the Empire, Nari was crowned as the first Empress of the Terran Stellar Empire. She was young for such responsibility, only 40 years old, but she had proven herself as a military commander and diplomat during the war. She stood before a crowd of representatives from 100 species. Some were human. Many were not. Aliens who had surrendered to human forces now stood as citizens of the new empire. The ceremony was designed to send a message. This empire would be different. 200 years ago, Nari began, her voice carrying across the square and to billions of viewers. The Galactic Council declared humanity unfit for their civilization. They called us violent, aggressive, dangerous, They exiled us to one star system and told us to die quietly. The crowd was silent, listening. They were wrong about one thing, Nari continued. We are not violent by nature, but we are survivors. And when you try to destroy survivors, they become something stronger than you ever imagined. She gestured to the alien representatives standing beside human ones. Today, I offer every species in this galaxy a choice. Join the Terran Empire as equals, not as conquered subjects, but as citizens with the same rights as any human. We judge by merit and ability, not by what species you were born into. Work hard, contribute to society, and you will rise. It doesn't matter if you have 2 legs or 8 tentacles. A few laughs rippled through the crowd. Or, Nari's voice hardened, resist. Fight us. And we will do what we have done to every system that opposed us. We will win. Because we are very, very good at winning. In a prison cell on a human-controlled world, the ancient Velthros sat in silence. The former arbiter of the Galactic Council was nearly 300 years old now. He had lived to see everything he built crumble. The door opened, and Ambassador Tae-sung's great-grandson, a young diplomat named Wu Jin, entered. He looked at the old insectoid with a mixture of pity and anger. Do you remember my great-grandfather? Wu Jin asked. Velthros's mandibles clicked softly. Ambassador Tae-sung. Yes. He stood before the council and pleaded for understanding. You exiled us. Yes. Wu Jin sat down across from the former arbiter. Why? What did we actually do that was so terrible? We followed your laws. We traded fairly. We never attacked anyone. Fiver, what we storing? Velthros was quiet for a long moment. We were afraid. Of what? Of you. Of humanity. Your species is only a few thousand years old, but you spread across 40 star systems in a century. You adapt to any environment. You learn faster than species who have been spacefaring for millennia. You are relentless. The old alien's voice was tired. We had seen species like yours before, young, hungry, expansionist. They always become conquerors. We thought, if we contained you early, we could prevent that. So you became the thing you feared, Wu Jin said. You used violence to stop violence that hadn't even happened yet. Yes. And we created exactly what we tried to prevent. Velthros looked at him with alien eyes that somehow conveyed regret. If we had welcomed you, worked with you, perhaps you would have become our friends instead of our conquerors. But we chose fear over hope. This is the price. Wu Jin stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I understand why you were afraid. We are relentless. We are survivors. But we didn't have to be conquerors. You made us this way. Commander Suho stood on the balcony of the governor's mansion on Proxima Centauri 3. This was the same colony Young Ho had evacuated 200 years ago. Now humans had returned, and Suho was its military governor. Below him, the city was being rebuilt. Human engineers worked alongside alien workers, many of them refugees from systems devastated by the war. The new city was already larger than the old colony had been. His assistant, a Yothian woman named Kelsara, joined him on the balcony. She had surrendered her ship during one of the early battles and chosen to serve the Empire rather than return to what was left of the Council. The infrastructure is ahead of schedule, she reported. Power grid should be fully operational in 3 months. Agriculture is already producing food. Crime rates are down 80% from Council times. Good, Suho said. What about the population? Are they accepting human rule? Better than expected. Most people here lived under Council bureaucracy for generations. They're surprised by how efficiently the Empire works. When they have a problem, they report it, and it gets fixed. Under the Council, they'd file a complaint and wait months for a response that usually said no. Suho nodded. The Empire was authoritarian, but it was efficient. Laws were strict, but applied equally to everyone. There was no corruption, because the penalties were severe. It wasn't perfect, but for many aliens, it was better than what they had before. Any resistance? He asked. Some. A group calling themselves the Free Council operates in the outer districts. They sabotage infrastructure and distribute propaganda. Small numbers, but dedicated. How are we handling it? Standard protocol. We arrest them when we catch them, give them fair trials, and punish according to law. No torture, no secret prisons. The Empress wants everything done properly. Because the Empire is trying to prove it's better than the Council, Suho said. Every time we act like tyrants, we justify the fear that got us exiled in the first place. On Centauri Prime, the old Council capital, the magnificent chamber where humanity had been judged, now served as the Terran Imperial Senate. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered here to debate policy and law. It was still a council of sorts, but very different from before. Each representative was elected by their home system, regardless of species. Humans held many seats simply because they controlled many systems, but aliens held plenty too. And, unlike the old council, decisions were made quickly and implemented efficiently. Senator Jamin, a human representative from Mars, stood to address the chamber. We face a choice about what to do with the remaining council territories. Some of my colleagues want to conquer them all. Others want to negotiate peace. I propose a third option. Offer them confederation. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Let them keep their governments, Jamin continued. But they must accept imperial oversight, trade agreements, military alliances. Basically, they become autonomous regions within the Empire. They get protection and prosperity. We get stability without constant warfare. A Draxan senator stood up. Why should we negotiate? We're winning. Because winning at what cost? Jamin replied. Every day this war continues. People die. Resources are wasted. And we create enemies who will fight us for generations. If we offer reasonable terms now, we can end this. The debate raged for hours. In the end, Empress Nari would make the final decision, but she listened carefully to the Senate's advice. That was part of the Empire's promise. Rulers would listen, even if they didn't always follow the advice given. In a secret facility, Dr. Jiwan, now nearly 250 years old, thanks to advanced medical technology, worked on her final project. She had recovered all the alien technology she had stolen during the evacuation, studied it, improved it, and used it to make humanity stronger. Now she was developing something new. Technology to terraform worlds faster than ever before. Not for war, but for peace. Why? Her assistant asked. We've already won. Because empires aren't built on weapons alone, Jiwan replied. They're built on prosperity. We need to turn conquered worlds into thriving colonies. We need to feed billions. We need to prove that imperial rule makes life better, not worse. She pulled up a hologram showing a barren world transforming into a green paradise. This is the future. Not constant war, but building, creating, making the galaxy better than it was. General Thakros stood before the remaining council leaders in a hidden station deep in neutral territory. His forces had been pushed back system after system. The unified council he had served no longer existed in any meaningful way. We've lost, he told them bluntly. The humans control a quarter of the galaxy and are still expanding. Our technology is inferior. Our forces are scattered. Our unity is broken. Continuing this war only means more death. You're saying we should surrender? One council member asked with outrage. I'm saying we should negotiate. Thakros replied. The human empress has offered reasonable terms. Confederation. Autonomy. Protection. It's better than conquest. It's still submission. It's survival, Thakros said firmly. Pride is worthless if your species is extinct. I've fought the humans for 2 years. I've seen what they can do. They will win, eventually. The only question is how many more people die before we accept that. The council members argued for another hour, but Thakros could see he had planted seeds of doubt. Some of them were starting to realize that the war was unwinnable. 6 months later, the Treaty of Centauri Prime was signed. 47 council species accepted confederation with the Terran Empire. They would keep their governments and cultures, but accept imperial oversight. In exchange, they received protection, trade benefits, and membership in the Imperial Senate. 23 species refused and continued fighting. But they were isolated now, without allies or support. Within a year, most of them had surrendered too. On Earth, Empress Nari stood in the same spot where the coronation had taken place and addressed the Empire again. "Today the war ends," she announced. "Not with total conquest, but with peace. Those who join us willingly are welcome. Those who resist will face consequences. But we prefer the first option. We are not conquerors for the sake of conquering. We build an empire because it's the only way to ensure we are never exiled again." She paused, letting her words sink in. The Galactic Council is gone. In its place stands the Terran Stellar Empire. We are not perfect. We will make mistakes. But we will be honest about those mistakes. We will judge by merit, not species. We will punish crime harshly, but fairly. And we will never, ever, allow fear to dictate our choices the way the Council did. On a human colony world at the edge of Imperial space, a young girl named Sora stood with her father, watching the sunset. Her father had been a soldier in the war, but was retired now, working as a farmer. "Daddy," she asked, "Grandpa says our people used to be exiled. What does that mean?" Her father knelt down to her level. "It means that long ago, the other species were afraid of us. They sent us away because they didn't understand us. That's mean. Yes, it was. But we used that time to become strong, and now we're never going to be sent away again." Sora looked up at the stars, now filled with human ships and colonies and possibilities. "So we won?" "Yes, we won." "Good," she said firmly. Then she went back to playing, because to her generation, the exile was just a story. They had grown up free, in an empire that stretched across the stars. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of the Terran Empire had begun. And humanity, once deemed unworthy of the stars, now stood as the dominant force in the galaxy. Not because they were the strongest at the beginning, but because when they were pushed down, they chose to rise higher than anyone thought possible.